The rain on the city of Fairhaven was a persistent, greasy drizzle that turned neon signs into bleeding smears and washed the color from everything but the darkness. It was the kind of rain that made people hurry, heads down, eager for the sanctuary of home. It was the perfect weather for the weeping jester. No one knew his name. He was a rumor, a shadow that coagulated in the alleys and dead-end streets. His costume was not one of garish carnival joy, but of a profound theatrical sadness. The fabric was a muted mottetin, motley of charcoal gray and bruised purple. The ruff around his neck was not white, but the yellowed color of old bone. His face was painted not with a smile, but with a downturned, tragic frown, from which two thick black tears had been meticulously drawn, trailing down his chalk-white cheeks to drip perpetually from his jawline. He carried no balloons. In his gloved hand, he carried a slender, well-maintained straight razor. His victims were not chosen at random. They were the city's secret, sad people, the ones whose despair was a scent he could follow. The middle-aged man sitting alone in his car after being fired, staring at the divorce papers on the passenger seat. The young woman crying silently on a park bench at 3 a.m. A positive pregnancy test and an empty bank account in her pocket. The elderly woman weeping over the grocery bill, counting out change for her dead husband's favorite soup. He found them at their absolute zero, the moment when the weight of living became unbearable. He did not attack with frenzy. He would approach slowly, his oversized floppy shoes making a soft, shuffling sound on the wet pavement. He would stand before them, a silent, tragic monument. When they looked up, startled, into that painted mask of distilled sorrow, they often felt a bizarre, fleeting kinship. Here was someone who looked as they felt. Then he would speak. His voice, when he used it, was a hollow, papery whisper that seemed to emanate from the costume itself. "I see your tears," he would say. "Let me show you mine." The razor would flash a silver stitch in the gloom. His cuts were not meant to kill quickly, but to open. A shallow, precise slice along the inner forearm, following the track of a vein. A nick on the cheek just below the eye, mimicking his own painted tears. He would watch, his painted frown unwavering, as his victims' real blood mingled with the rain and their own despair. The horror was not in the pain, but in the intimacy of it. He was making their internal agony external, a performer directing the final, bloody act of their tragedy. Only then would he deliver the fatal cut, a deep, final stroke across the throat, a grotesque parody of a clown's wide smile. He would arrange the body with a terrible, poignant care, often placing their own hands over their eyes or curling them into a fetal position. He left no other mark, no trophy. The only signature was the scene itself, a perfect, violent echo of a silent scream. Detective Mara Voss had 17 of these scenes imprinted on her soul. She saw them every time she closed her eyes. The forensic reports were useless. No fibers, no DNA, no consistent murder weapon beyond the sharp, single-edged blade. The only pattern was the profound, suffocating sadness that lingered in the air of each crime scene, a sadness that seemed to seep into her own bones. She had started crying in the shower, great heaving sobs for people she'd never met, their despair becoming a poison in her system. The city was drowning in a dual epidemic, a crumbling economy, a spike in suicides, and the whispered terror of the jester who came for the broken. Parents told their children not to cry too loudly. People began to hide their sadness behind false smiles, which only made the loneliness deeper, the scent of their despair richer for the monster and the motley. The break came with the 18th victim, a young man named Leo. He was different, hadn't been crying in an alley, had been in a support group for chronic depression, walking home with a flicker of genuine hard-won hope. The jester found him anyway, but Leo fought. He didn't see a kindred spirit in the painted face. He saw the annihilation of his fragile progress. The struggle was brief, messy. Leo's fingernails, torn and bloody, had scraped away a tiny patch of the white face paint beneath the jester's left eye and snagged a single coarse fiber of a grayish-blonde eyebrow hair. It was enough. The DNA led to Arthur Pym, a quiet, meticulous man in his late 40s who worked as a restorer at the city's historical theater. He specialized in repairing antique tragic masks and mourning costumes. His apartment was a museum of sorrow, walls lined with framed playbills from tragedies, sculptures of weeping angels, and jars of pigments labeled ash gray, midnight blue, and tear white. Voss led the raid. They found him in his workshop, not wearing the costume, but carefully stitching a tear in the rough. He looked up, his own face a living echo of the painted one, pale, with deep-set, sorrowful eyes and a naturally downturned mouth. He didn't resist. He simply laid the needle down and nodded. In the interrogation room, under the sterile light, he did not gloat or rant. He wept, but his tears were not of remorse for his victims. They were tears of frustration. "They didn't understand," he whispered, his voice the same dry rustle from the alleys. "I was helping them. They were in so much pain. The world just tells you to smile through it. To hide it, it's a lie. The pain has to be seen. It has to be beautiful, or it means nothing." Voss stared, a cold horror settling in her stomach. "You made a spectacle of their suffering." "I gave it dignity," he insisted, a flash of passion in his watery eyes. "A final, true performance. My mother, she cried every day after my father left. But she always painted on a smile for the neighbors. She died with that fake smile on her face. It was an insult to her pain. To the truth, he saw himself not as a killer, but as an artist, a dramatist of despair. Each murder was a one-act play, where he was the director and the audience. And the victim's blood was the only honest critique. And the tears he painted on his face were for the world's refusal to weep openly, and his victims were the unwilling actors in his grandiose, homicidal tragedy. Arthur Pym was convicted, locked away in a concrete cell where no rain fell and no one's tears were ever seen. The killings stopped, but the city of Fairhaven did not heal. The rain still fell. The quiet sadness in its citizens had been given a shape and a name, and now it felt more permanent, more watched. Detective Voss would sometimes catch her reflection in a window at night, the lines of exhaustion under her eyes, and for a heart-stopping second, she would see the faint, ghostly tracks of the jester's black tears. He hadn't just killed people. He had weaponized sadness itself, and in a world increasingly full of it, that was a terror that no prison cell could ever truly contain. The true horror was the lingering doubt he planted, in a world that tells you to never let them see you cry. Is the monster the one who weeps for you, or the one who tells you to stop?